If you're a Battlefield fan like I am, you have become probably jaded over the course of this franchise's entire existence. The golden years of Battlefield seem to be well behind it. After Battlefield 1, the series released two future games that completely destroyed the game's reputation. Battlefield 5 was a weird, pro-feminist, alternate future game where DICE and EA doubled down on pushing girl bosses and actively rewriting real historical stories to shoehorn in feminist propaganda. That reveal trailer had a disabled woman with a prosthetic arm shooting a sniper rifle during World War II. And the entire thing just led to EA having to fight uphill ever since. And then beyond this, Battlefield's next game came out, which was 2042, and it too was plagued with many problems. Not necessarily the political kind, well, somewhat, but instead, really everything else. The game had no campaign, it ran like dog water at release, and was a complete mess as well, and eventually the game was fixed mostly, but by the time that was done, the damage was already there, which is why with Battlefield 6 now around the corner, the stakes have, quite literally, never been higher for EA or DICE when it comes to making this game the big hit that it needs to be. From the history of this game, its competition, the real human cost, the budget, and so much more, there's a lot to cover in this video. And I fear that ultimately Battlefield 6 is something that is not only unreasonable in terms of size, even from AAA, but if games like this could tank the whole industry with not just the monetary, but the human cost of it all. So far, the game is performing well, people are loving the beta, and I can only imagine that pre-orders right now are probably skyrocketing. There's a real appetite for Battlefield right now, that's clear to see, and the open beta managed to hit over 300,000 players right out of the gate, which is a good and healthy sign on Steam alone. I mean, the milestones don't stop there. As Insider Gaming reported, Battlefield 6 has beaten almost every Call of Duty game ever made on Twitch. As of the making of this video anyways, around 850,000 people are watching streamers play Battlefield 6 live on Twitch alone. Insane numbers, I know. Battlefield 6, as seen here, has beaten every Call of Duty game's peak on Twitch besides Warzone. Although Warzone, of course, came out at the perfect time, which was the start of the pandemic, so those numbers are going to be next to impossible to beat really. Battlefield 6 is even outperforming other games' peaks like Overwatch, PUBG, Rainbow Six Siege, and Escape from Tarkov. Like I said, there's a real hunger for a solid new first-person military shooter game, and that makes sense. Since, like I said, Battlefield has been kind of a mess, and that's putting it lightly, for a long time it seems. It's been almost 10 years since I actually bought a Battlefield game day one, because as much as I love this series, Battlefield 5 and 2042 were clear examples of everything that I hated in modern video games. Forced feminist propaganda, terrible optimization, and cheaters galore ruining the experience for everyone who played. Unfortunately for Battlefield 6, that cheater problem is kind of already rearing its ugly head, and the game isn't even out yet. As IGN reported here recently, Battlefield 6 is full of cheaters already, which is a terrible sign for the health and longevity of this game. And what makes matters worse is that in order to play Battlefield 6 proper, despite your platform of choice, you must accept to have your account and whole setup filtered through EA and DICE's anti-cheat system, which is dubbed Javelin. Yet despite this so-called cheat filtering, cheaters have been able to bypass EA's Javelin system already and continue cheating regardless, which is, yes, a terrible sign. And by the way, if you enjoy the content, consider liking the video, leaving a comment, and subscribing to keep up to date on everything, but here's some footage of a player who uses cheats. As you can see, they're able to see the exact hitboxes on every character and can see in real time every enemy combatant on the other team, where they're situated, what they're doing as well. Not fair at all, I know, and if this is just the open beta, what's going to happen to the full game when it releases? Because obviously, this is how games like this die really quickly. It's a big reason why I stopped playing games like Destiny 2. Stuff like Trials of Osiris in that game, which is an endgame PvP mode, became borderline unplayable for me. Because when I would get to my 7th win game in a row before getting my loot, suddenly my game would crash or disconnect me. Later on, my friends and I would realize that other players in Destiny 2's community would essentially attack other people's IP addresses to make them disconnect from the fight so that the enemy team could win and get their loot, forcing us to lose, which is what happened, and then having us to start over. Yeah, ever since that happened, like more than 3 times at least, I never played Trials of Osiris again and I abandoned Destiny 2 altogether, amongst other things. The point is that cheating in an online multiplayer game ruins everything, and when this much is riding on Battlefield 6 performing well, it's a legit concern to have. At least that user that I showed you cheating has, according to one of the producers on this game, has already been banned. But the fact still remains that they shouldn't have been able to get through your so-called Javelin anti-cheat software so easily either way. As seen here from Call of Duty's blog actually, but Battlefield by the way is also using the exact same anti-cheat at launch, which is called Secure Boot. Both COD and Battlefield will use this same system to scan PCs specifically to ensure that no cheating has been enabled. I assume this also just comes baked into the console ports as well, but the fact that people are still cheating regardless, that is worrying. The cheats being widespread, as Vice showed in their article, are mostly aimbot as per usual, and the radar, which you saw allowing you to see everything on the battlefield, no pun intended. But the big difference here between Battlefield 6 and its biggest competition, that being Call of Duty, is one guy, which is this dude on screen right here, and his name is Vince Zampella. If you're an old school Call of Duty fan like me, you probably know who Vince Zampella is. After all, Vince was the co-founder of Infinity Ward, which made the original Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, which I already know you've all played that game too. Vince, by the way, was instrumental in crafting the engine upgrades that allowed Call of Duty to usher in its new modern era. He was also responsible for pushing Call of Duty away from its World War II roots into modern military aesthetics as well. Vince also worked on the iconic storyline of Call of Duty 4 and was also directly involved with the new gameplay mechanics that have since become the new norm for plenty of games. The idea of shooting an enemy and then gaining experience points for it, the whole kill streak system, all of that, Vince was a part of at the top. Vince would then leave Infinity Ward, founded Respawn Entertainment at EA, made Titanfall, Apex Legends, and of course the Jedi games, and now he's spearheading Battlefield as well. And the difference in how Battlefield 6 plays, runs, and treats players and the world is a stark difference to how it was being ran before under different leadership. And this is why Battlefield is likely going to make Call of Duty hit that panic button before long. After all, remember, back in the Battlefield 5 days, you had people like Alan Kurtz who said moronic things about defending having women fighters in his World War II Battlefield game like, I knew this was going to be a fight when I pushed for female soldiers in Battlefield. I have a daughter, and I don't want to ever have to answer her question of why can't I make a character that looks like me with because you're a girl. I fundamentally feel to my core this is the right way, and I will find myself on the right side of history. Yup, that infamous quote. Also, that's the same game as well that had websites like Kotaku, of course, protecting that implementation of female soldiers in a World War II game because of course they did. But in hindsight, all of this was by design, since the rise of DEI and more was exploding at this time and reached its fever point in 2024 before it all came crashing down. It still didn't stop EA from trying it again though in Battlefield 2042 when they added the first non-binary soldier to the franchise whose name was Sundance, who unironically has a septum piercing and an anarchy pin shown on her hoodie because nothing says fighting for the military-industrial complex, and enlisting with that same military service like virtue signaling the exact opposite of the very organization that you work for. Yeah, it was all so tiresome, I know, which is why it's very clear that Battlefield 6 has done away with pretty much all of these things so far anyways, which its competitors are still trying to push despite fan backlash. This is why Battlefield 6, at least so far, seems to have completely pivoted back to its roots, which is really all anybody wanted from this series anyways. If you ask me, right now, this game will likely be the biggest game of the year. The only other competition Battlefield is going to have this year is, of course, Call of Duty. But according to one ex-Activision Blizzard executive, COD doesn't stand a chance this year from Insider Gaming. Battlefield 6 is going to boot stomp Call of Duty this year according to former Blizzard boss. This ex-executive in this case is Mike Ybarra, who has had quite a few good and equally bad takes, but here's what he said. Battlefield will boot stomp COD this year, but the real win here is COD won't be lazy anymore and we'll all get better first-person shooter games for it. I would hope so, but I wouldn't be so sure either way since the usual method here is a game does well, it sells great, then the publisher gets greedy, realizing that they have a potential mega cash cow on their hands, and then they start milking this series with as many collaborations, DLC bundles, and forced releases to keep making as much money as humanly possible while they can. In Call of Duty's case, it's actually insane that Black Ops 6 isn't even a year old yet, and Black Ops 7 is coming out this year already. It's kind of ridiculous, to be honest with you. But what Call of Duty has become is very easily what Battlefield can become too. And I don't know about you guys, but the idea of a new Battlefield and Call of Duty every single year, that sounds like actual market saturation death at that point. Trends tend to dictate what gets made, and honestly, I'm worried about Battlefield doing well. Only because it will cause more publishers to think they can also make their own big AAA military shooters as well. Then we're back in the 2006-2012 times when new military gray slop shooter games are coming out every other week pretty much. One user would reply to Mike Ybarra saying no way Battlefield outperforms Call of Duty, to which Mike would reply, Call of Duty has gone downhill for years since then. It's a mess. Cheating, heavy UI install, rainbow colors, people are sick of it. Luckily, Battlefield will force them to change it. This part was interesting to me because Mike, as seen here, worked a little over 4 years at Activision Blizzard as vice president. So this guy was keenly aware of how Call of Duty was being made behind closed doors and knew the inner workings of that franchise. So for him to publicly now state that Call of Duty has gone downhill since then, and mind you, the user he replied to used Infinite Warfare and Battlefield 1 as a time frame, which both games came out in 2016, so that's years before Mike Ybarra even officially joined the company. So for him to now say that Call of Duty has been going downhill since then means this dude knew that COD was a cesspool for years, but could never speak openly against it. And for him to now say it as he puts it, it's a mess, is actually quite damning. This proves that, like many, and I have said this to myself included, that the identity politics of yesteryear that are still prevalent in games are continuing to destroy them, and the lasting effects have been horrific. Like I said earlier, Battlefield 5 really was a massive political statement by DICE and EA when they released it. It pushed women to the forefront, it implemented female soldiers where they clearly didn't belong, and they literally put a woman on the cover art of the game. And again, they also rewrote actual real-life history so they could implement girl boss main characters into their campaign to push a message. I mean, Call of Duty hasn't been any better. They too have been pushing many female characters onto players as well. They even notoriously had a Russian sniper lady in Vanguard played by Laura Bailey of all people, which is actually hilarious considering that the gaming industry likes to pretend that they care about hiring people who are ethnically the characters they portray in games. Yet Activision Blizzard clearly did not care at all when it came to Vanguard. Laura Bailey playing Polina Petrova, a Russian sniper, despite Laura Bailey not even being Russian whatsoever or even looking Russian at all, that's one thing. Laura Bailey is some vague mixture of Caucasian and Native American, according to Google anyways. So the virtue signaling only matters, I guess, when it pushes a narrative, but what Ybarra says tracks. Call of Duty has been pushing this sort of slop for years, with tons of bundles that showcase all kinds of awfully designed character models, and that's putting it lightly. Call of Duty has had things like rainbow skins as seen here. They had like a unicorn skin for some reason, which is completely out of place. They just have random horror characters that again make zero sense given the context, or even rappers like Nicki Minaj, which again, why is that even in this game? But Battlefield 6, apparently anyways, will avoid this as seen here. Battlefield 6 will steer clear of goofy skins. I don't think it needs Nicki Minaj. It's not the only one, since fans also got mad at Call of Duty when they added slop like Seth Rogen and Kevin Smith to the game as well. I mean, these whole crossover skins in these games are just getting stupid and ridiculous. So what Mike Ybarra said about Call of Duty is a mess, I mean, he's right, but it's been a mess for a really long time now. And the forced crossover skins really only exist because they worked so well for Fortnite and were profitable, so obviously they were trying to copy them. But Battlefield should not be like Fortnite. I think we can all agree on that. It's grounded after all, and realistic. But I would wager that once the first month's sales come in for Battlefield 6, and they probably will explode right past EA's expectations, they're going to shift priorities quick, and then start implementing crossover skins almost immediately to make as much money as humanly possible. Because none of these companies really have morals at the best of times, and once there's money to be made, they will dig up any corpse they got to keep their pensions well funded. But taking what Ybarra said, that Battlefield has the chance to change things, it makes you wonder if that, even if they could, would they even do that? As PC Gamer states here, this year is a good year to skip Call of Duty in favor of Battlefield on paper. But I still think people underestimate how popular and lucrative Call of Duty really is. Black Ops 6 was the fastest selling game in the series yet. Black Ops 7 will likely beat that too. The problem with Battlefield anyways is that its biggest competitor was never really Call of Duty. Their biggest hurdle was themselves if you ask me, because Battlefield games notoriously always launch as buggy messes filled to the brim with problems. I remember playing Battlefield 4 when I bought my PlayStation 4 day one, and the game was so buggy it deleted my campaign save file 5 times before I gave up. And the game's online modes were crumbling under their own weight. I didn't actually complete the campaign for Battlefield 4 until 6 or 7 months after release due to how poorly optimized it all was. You see, Battlefield, in my opinion, can't be trusted any more than Call of Duty can these days. Both of these games are just birds of the same feather. They're both messes that have plenty of problems either at release or later on once the honeymoon phase ends. I do admit that Vince Zampella running Battlefield 6, that is a big selling point for me, and it does give me a lot of hope, because that guy does objectively make good games and knows what he's doing, but this is EA in Battlefield after all. All the physics and the engine, which is still Frostbite by the way, the same engine pretty much every game in this series for like the past 10 years and then some is run on, and performed horribly with, is still being used for Battlefield 6 here. Sure, it's optimized, but it still stands. So I do apologize if I'm not 100% sold on this sort of thing yet, especially when the Battlefield player base has been completely burned not once but multiple times for believing this is it. This is finally the game where Battlefield is back. We've said that too many times already, and it's never come true, and if you ask me what games like Battlefield 6 or Black Ops 7 represent, is something the industry cannot replicate reasonably anymore. These games are insanely expensive to make, maintain, and keep alive. And that doesn't even include the human cost, as Games Radar reports. Battlefield 6 has reportedly costed over $400 million to make, and led to developers taking up to 9 months off due to burnout. Anonymous EA developers spoke to Ars Technica, that's another website, which is being referenced here. They said about Battlefield's higher-ups demanding the game hit at least 100 million players, which is, yes, ridiculous by the way, but here's what the devs said. Obviously, Battlefield has never achieved those numbers before, one EA employee says. It's important to understand that over about that same period, 2042 has only gotten 22 million players as another. Battlefield 1 is the most successful in the series in terms of player count, and that only got to 30 million, so expectations are high. Games like this are unreasonable in terms of their budget and scope. Most games have one development studio. Battlefield 6, by the way, they have 4. You have DICE, Criterion, Motive, and Ripple Effect all working together to make this one game a reality, if you can believe it. And when it comes to burnouts, according to these nameless EA developers, it's seriously bad on Battlefield 6, as they said here. There's I would hesitate to count, but a large number of staff compared to other projects I've been on who have taken mental exhaustion leaves here, says one staffer who has taken this kind of leave themselves, some as short as 2 weeks to a month, some as long as 8 months and 9. Fathom that, guys. You work so hard on this game for so long, you have to take mental health leave for months due to how grueling and draining it is. I have to ask, is it a game like this even worth it at that point? As another developer would say, the more globalized structure of the studios compounds this issue, as one employee says. My day could start as early as 5 a.m. Throughout the day, they'd have meetings with studios around the world. Then my evenings would be spent doing my work, because I'd be tied up juggling things all across the board and across time zones. We have people working somewhere in the 15 to 20 hours a day to make this game a reality. This cannot be how modern video games get made anymore. It's no wonder why companies have tried to raise prices on games and include as many bundles as humanly possible to squeeze any amount of money they can possibly gain from these sorts of games, because the cost of making them is staggering, and I honestly don't think the industry can handle or continue making games like this. The industry is like a string of yarn, and they are being pulled so hard by both sides that it's bound to snap eventually. What are we doing here that Battlefield 6 is costing over $400 million to make? I mean, GameFile ran a story too, where they were able to find out the budgets of various Call of Duty games, and it's just all insane. As seen here, Black Ops 3 had a budget of $450 million. Modern Warfare 2019 had a budget of $640 million. And Black Ops Cold War costed somewhere near $700 million to create. This means for those 3 games, it costed Activision Blizzard, before any conversion rates or whatever, roughly $1.79 billion to make just 3 Call of Duty games. The Witcher 3 costed roughly $81 million to make, meaning Activision Blizzard could have made 22, almost 23 full-length Witcher 3 sized games for the cost of just 3 Call of Duty games. Again, tell me how any of this is sustainable if Battlefield 6 somehow underperforms over the long term. It could mean disastrous massive layoffs across multiple studios and departments, yet like any other failure, the people in charge will stay employed because despite them making the decisions, they never seemingly get let go first. And look, I'm not saying Battlefield 6 will be bad. So far, people are loving the beta, and that's great, but how can this industry continue making games of this size? Before the strings snap, in not just their hands, but their brains too. I mean, the human cost here is just insane. But as seen here from Insider Gaming again, Activision believes that Call of Duty is too big to fail despite the competition. As one anonymous source spoke to Insider Gaming told them, Activision is keeping a close eye on Battlefield. They are not worried about the game outcompeting its flagship franchise. It said that Activision leadership believes that Call of Duty is too big to fail and will remain a profitable annual release franchise for many years to come. At the time of writing, an annual Call of Duty title is penciled in for the next 4 years at least. So they already got the next 4 Call of Duties in development already, each likely costing hundreds of millions of dollars to make. The reality is that EA is just not really equipped like Activision is to keep making COD titles annually or anything like that. So while maybe Battlefield 6 outperforms Black Ops 7, which honestly I still kind of doubt it, there's no way its momentum will keep it profitable enough beyond the next Call of Duty or the next. So this battle to the bottom with inflated budgets, human being sanity, and the loyalty and destruction of the trust between player and publisher is likely going to burst before long. Yes, Battlefield 6 is going to sell like crazy. I hope it's a great game, but what I think this means for the industry is that I hope they don't take the worst lessons from this, but knowing how AAA works, that's exactly what will happen. But what do you think about Battlefield 6 versus Call of Duty Black Ops 7? The fact these games are numbered like Final Fantasy titles already makes me roll my eyes. But let me know what you think as always in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more content in the future, and I'll see you next time.